everybody, Backyard Bullion here, and a warm welcome to you all joining me for another precious metal ramble. Now, gold has been this immortal commodity that has followed kings, queens, emperors and nations throughout history. It has been the tool to preserve wealth throughout time, and it does seem that even in these troubled and turbulent times that we're going through right now, that it is very relevant. It is still that commodity that drives that safe haven, that place to put money where it will be preserved. All you've got to do is look at the recent inflation reports and the reaction of the markets to just see quite how important gold really is in that long term. Now, about the long term, I want to present today some information about why gold is still going to be relevant going forward into the future, the near and medium and long term, to be quite honest. And a lot of today's information is presented courtesy of Nevada King, who are sponsoring today's video. A big thank you to them for their sponsorship. If you would like to find out more about them and their mining operations, which we'll go through in a little bit in this video, then please feel free to click down below to a lot of their company data and information. And you're going to, as you saw probably flash up on the screen, their tickers and everything can be found down below as well. Now, gold, as I said, has been this mainstay for a very long time, and it's not just modern era gold that we've seen popularity for. Gold has been, throughout history, something that has been, of course, in demand, and all you've got to do is look back through history at the gold rushes in the various countries and regions of the world, and of course, one of the most iconic is the Wild West gold rushes of the 1800s and early 1900s. Of course, Nevada played a huge role in that kind of gold rush era. And it is quite fascinating, really, to see that that demand for gold is still really, really high. Now, one of the big driving forces that has happened recently, of course, around gold is inflation and currency values. And we saw this last week with the announcement of 6.2% inflation rate in the US, which was significantly higher than the 5.8 predicted, that really, inflation is a problem that is going to be here for a while. I am not a proponent of the fact that I think that there will be hyperinflation, but I do think and I do agree that inflation right now, everything is more expensive. And really one of the only ways that you can preserve that long-term wealth is through commodities like gold. And you saw that with the market reaction last week as well. Gold has jumped up close to $100 an ounce, which is a big gain in the last couple of weeks. So really interesting times at the moment. Now, one of the things relating to inflation is interest rates, and one of the big I've always said it as well, but I've been reading interesting articles recently about increase in interest rates and how that will have a negative impact on gold and silver, because of course if you have the interest rates go up, then it looks more attractive as a yielding return on an investment for people to put money into government bonds and things like that. That is to a certain extent true, but I also do think that the modern world that we're living in now, the post-COVID world that we're in right now, there is this change of ethos, change of attitude towards financial markets and the fact that things are super turbulent right now. And all you've got to do is look at the last sort of 18 months when COVID really did hit and the brown stuff hit the fan. Huge drops in metal markets because all these financial institutions, highly leveraged, were forced to sell a lot of it to pay for margin calls. So I do think that there is very much going to be a place for gold in the large portfolios of the big Wall Street banks, the rich and famous as well, going forwards. It is something that is going to be relevant. And even with potential interest rates going up over the course of the next couple of months to try and combat inflation, I do think that is not necessarily it's not going to collapse the gold price. You're not going to see a massive rush from everybody going out of gold straight away into these products, these investment products. But I do think it is something that is relevant. Now, in terms of demand for gold, I think there is increased demand for gold out there, but I'm not entirely sure that it is something that is sustainable. You've got to look at the production numbers for gold over the last couple of years, which have sort of started to level off in terms of mining. What I found really interesting was that even with the disruption of COVID, that we have still seen pretty much the same mining figures come out for 2020. So for me, I personally don't feel like there's like this double-edged sword of increased demand and shortened supply at the moment, which I do think is going to be interesting. And as I said, for the whole point of inflation is to devalue currency, and you can't devalue gold. Gold is gold; it stays there. An ounce of gold is still an ounce of gold, and throughout history that has been time proven to be the thing that really does matter. Now, in terms of today's sponsor, Nevada King, I did want to just quickly talk with you guys a little bit about some of their operations. What I found super fascinating. Now, going back to the sort of history of the Wild West and the gold that the gold rush that we all know and has been like immortalized in movies and films and TV throughout history. Nevada plays and has played a ginormous role in US gold production, and I did not know this fact, but 80% of all of the US's gold production comes from Nevada. So for Nevada King, of course, an aptly named company, to have the fourth largest operations in basically gold mining in Nevada, I think is a really interesting fact about them. And another interesting thing is, if you had Nevada as a country in its own right, it would be in the top 5 of gold producing nations in the world. So that, I think, shows that there really is still quite a lot of potential for gold, certainly coming out of Nevada as well, which I find absolutely fascinating. Now, as I said, all of their information is down in the description box. There's a link to their kind of corporate presentation, which is really interesting stuff to have a read through. I do want to point out that I'm not a financial advisor. I'm not necessarily advocating the purchasing of mining stock specifically, but it is something to certainly have a look at. And I would then run it by any financial advisors that you might be able to talk with about it, because it does represent an interesting way of investing in gold without actually physically investing in the metal itself. But it does seem that there's this appetite at the moment globally for gold. I think that's never going to go away. There is this huge amount of potential for, basically wealth preservation to really be the driving force for nations. And all you've got to do is look at some of the big countries out there and some of their historical gold purchasing in the last couple of years, and you really do see that it is very relevant for a lot of people, which I think is fascinating. So if you are interested in finding out anything more about Nevada King, there's links down in the description below to their corporate presentations where you can see all about their portfolio. They've got a whole bunch of different claims and stakes in the whole area at the moment, which I think is fascinating. Another really interesting thing I found out as well, that the claim staking your land literally is driving stakes into the land to make your claim on these things, which I find incredible. That is, again, harking back to the era of the gold rush, where you would go out and you would literally stake your claim. That's where we get the phrase from, which I think is incredible. So Nevada King have a huge amount of operations. They're the 4th largest Nevada-based gold mining company out there at the moment. They've got a huge kind of potential for actually taking on a lot more of that as well and becoming one of the biggest in Nevada, which I think is quite interesting. So thank you once again to Nevada King for their sponsorship of today's video. It's much appreciated. All of the information about them is in the description box below. Otherwise, I'd love to know your thoughts and opinions on gold going forwards. I know for me that it certainly forms a very important part of my overall portfolio of assets and things to hold for a long term. I do not regret at all buying gold, even in its expensive proof form, because I think just having this stuff, holding this stuff, is going to be critical for the future. I think that there is so much turbulence, so much unknown right now in the world, that just simply having some of this physical stuff is critical for anybody. Now, again, that's not financial advice, formal financial advice. It's just my opinion. I do think that there are other things out there which are just as good or better than gold in terms of investments. But as a part of a portfolio, it is absolutely critical. So that's it from me. A big thank you to you all for watching. Thumbs up if you've enjoyed this video. And if you're not subscribed, then make sure you hit that subscribe button so we can make sure you see the next video that we do. Otherwise, we'll see you next time. As always, please make sure that you like, share, comment, and subscribe for more.